How is it December and the garden still looks this amazing? Honestly, this is the winter garden that I've always dreamed about. I finally figured out how to do it, how to get it right. So today I'm going to share all the things that I did right, all the things I've done wrong in the past, and take you on a little tour of our fall and winter garden. For those of you who aren't familiar, we are in the Pacific Northwest, beautiful Washington state. We are very lucky to have some great weather in the fall and even early winter. It's December right now and it's gorgeous out. We still have some sunshine, shocking, and we actually still have had some pretty mild temperatures. Now, we've definitely had some frost, but the great thing about fall and winter gardening is that if you're growing the right crops, that frost isn't going to be that big of a deal breaker. So we've been consistently eating out of this garden spring, summer, fall, and now moving into winter. So here are some of my best tips that have helped keep the harvest coming. One of the best things that I did this year was to actually figure out a rotation schedule for our garden. It can make a huge difference. So before I would kind of just plant all of my beds and then harvest everything, and I'd be like, oh, well, what do I do now? Where do I put things? So what I did this year instead was I figured out a rotation so that our beds that had garlic, they got harvested in early summertime, and then they got a summer cover crop, and then they became what now has a lot of our fall crops in it. Whereas other beds that had our summer crops now have cover crops, and then crops that had our early spring crops now have cover crops for fall. I have a full schedule. If you're interested, let me know in the comments. It's super good way to make sure that you have the bed space. When we have a limited space like this, we really have to make the most of it. And figuring out a proper rotation makes a huge difference. Instead of just planting all of your beds, take the time to figure out how do you want to look for the whole year, not just for one of the growing seasons. One of the other things that I did this year that's made a big difference is learning how to properly successionally plant. Now, I knew how to successionally plant, but I never really followed the practices. Instead, I would just kind of go at it, throw things in the ground, fill everything up, and then harvest still and be done. You really, if you want to have that extended harvest, need to be continually sowing things throughout the year. Every couple of weeks, I was sowing more things so that then things are going to pop up and be harvested at different times. That's one of the big problems is we end up having these huge harvests, especially when it comes to like greens and things like that you can't really preserve as well. If you're planting in succession, what that means is that you're continually clearing out your beds and planting new things in them. Now, I don't mean clearing them out altogether. What I mean is that you're making the most of your space. So when one plant is spent, or if you just notice it's not doing well, make the hard call and just remove it. A lot of times I'll hold on, I'll be like, oh, what if? And I didn't do that this year, and it made a big difference. Doing that has really helped clear enough space so that we can continually be planting things, and I had room for my fall plantings. The next trick is actually planting early enough. So not only are we planting continually, but planting it early enough. And that was huge for me. And in a lot of previous years, I kind of missed that window of opportunity, because if you're growing in the cold season, your plants have to be pretty established by the start of that cold season. So I actually started in August and then planted all the way through October every few weeks. We've been harvesting lettuce for the last 3 months now, and it's been incredible. So again, we don't want all of those harvests at the same time though. That's too many salads. But if we can be harvesting continually and planting continually up until the point where the soil is so cold that it's not going to germinate, that still gives us a big window of time in most regions. It's been fantastic being able to eat out of the garden continually all through fall, having that fresh food that you just crave so much in the wintertime. I am incredibly proud of these cabbages. You will notice that they have some slug damage. So slug damage is just this irregular eaten holes, usually around the lower leaves and the edges. You can see it very clearly here. In fact, I picked off several slugs just this morning. Perfection is never the goal with gardening. Remember, it's an ecosystem. If something's not eating it, it's not part of an ecosystem. Honestly, I think they're about ready to give birth to their fully formed Cabbage Patch child. I do leave a lot of my pots out. You can see these have a mix. They had some herbs in them and some calendula. The calendula is, of course, continuing on because it's a rock star like that. It's a great way to have some nice blossoms, especially for pollinators are still out looking for something good to eat in the winter and fall. One of my other go-to crops are radishes. Like, I just love a good radish, but I don't always grow them for the root. You know how we eat them for the root, and they're delicious that way. But I actually really like growing them for their greens because you can get multiple harvests. Now, the greens are good. They have that same like spicy kick as the actual radish does. Here's Stanley. He's brought his bone for us. So they've got a great flavor to them. You can like chop them down, leave the root in the ground, chop them all the way back to where the root starts, and they're going to grow more greens again. Now, they're not only good for you, but they're also really good for your livestock. I heavily rely on this as a crop for my chickens. And so our tractor chickens get radish greens all the time because they're just so abundant, super cold hardy, and they're just going to keep growing. They're super tough, and they don't really get bothered a lot by pests, which is a win in my book. When it comes to the fall garden and really just cold weather gardening in general, you really want to plant things that are going to give you the most bang for your buck. So you want to do really cold hardy crops. I have a full post up of my favorite cold hardy crops on the website, and I'll link to that. But you also want to grow the crops that are really going to be not only hardy, but just have the least amount of effort on your part. So that means that they're going to be disease resistant, they're going to be really pretty pest resistant, and they're also just going to produce a large harvest with minimal work on your end. One of my favorites for that is Swiss chard. As you can see here, I have a beautiful batch of it. This is a younger batch, and it actually got hit pretty hard with powdery mildew in the fall. And what I did was I came in and I just trimmed it back. It looks gorgeous now. It's already back to thriving again. This is a hardy plant, and honestly, chard can last months. This particular crop I planted in the springtime. I have another patch that was planted in late winter of last year, so it just keeps going, and it tastes so much better than kale. Forget the kale, go with the chard. It's cold hardy down to about 25 degrees, and if you plant the green varieties, they're even hardier than the rainbow varieties, and I've noticed that they get less powdery mildew. One of the best things I did this year was by balancing, the rotational gardening. I learned how I could care for the soil as well as the plants. The soil is the key to everything in the garden. So the soil should always be your first priority throughout the year. One thing that we always want to do is keep it covered. I apply about 1 to 2 inches of mulch a year, and we make our own compost. Don't need to apply it very often. I do it, usually just in the fall. I might add a light sprinkling of it in the springtime, but when you have that dynamic of compost and healthy soil, it doesn't need a lot. Do a lot of cover crops in the fall. You can see here, these are cold hardy cover crops, and it's a mix. These form a living mulch, and basically what they do is they grow until it gets cold enough that they're killed back naturally by the frost. If you live in a warmer region, you might need to either weed eat them or till them under, depending what your preference is. He's always here, always helping. They have so many different attributes. So some of them can help deter pests, like the mustard family ones. Some of them are going to be fixing nitrogen, like our legumes. Some of them, their roots are going to be forming biomass down below. And of course, then you have grazing for your dogs as well. But cover crops are a great way to go. I know they can be intimidating, but honestly, it's so easy. You broadcast the seeds over the over the bed, and you just work them into the soil, and they're going to do their thing. As long as you keep them watered, they're going to pop up. So I actually rotate mine through. So I'll do cover crops in the fall in most of my beds that had summer crops, like my tomatoes, squashes, things like that. They'll get cover crops in the fall and winter. And then for the ones that, were active during most of the the winter and had my fall crops, they get spring cover crops or summer cover crops. Usually I do summer crops after my garlic. So once we harvest the garlic in like July, then I'll do summer cover crops like buckwheat and oats in those beds. So we're always taking care of our soil. We're always giving back to it. And that's the best thing you can do in your garden. Be sure to click the link if you want my full list of winter crops that I love. These are crops that do super well in cold hardy conditions. I talk a little bit more about them in this blog post. Hit the like and subscribe button. Leave me comments on ideas for more posts. This is a brand new channel, so hitting that like and subscribe really helps get the word out and get these videos in front of people who want to learn about permaculture and learn more about how to grow their food in natural and sustainable ways, which we are all about. So thanks, Garden Pals. I'll see you next time.